Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Ben Golub.
Oh, there you go. That's pretty good. What is this jacket, though? Let's talk about that. Where did you find that? You look like a Golden Girls. I've got everyone. Do you want to cut me off from everyone?
Oh,
Or?
you have everyone?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really mind.
Uh,
As long as you don't mind me on the channel and stuff.
I just don't. Hold on.
What do you guys think of the font size? Like one a little bigger, but I think just scroll a little more. Does it look okay?
Yeah, I think that looks good.
Good.
Yeah, bigger. This big. I mean, this is this bigger. Yes, I agree. Hey,
They're nice,
Andy.
right?
Ken, I need you. Ken.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program will begin in 5 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please turn off all your personal digital devices. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Ben Golub.
Hey everybody, welcome back to day 2 of DockerCon. Did you have fun yesterday? Woo! Yeah, I had a blast, And again, it's just amazing to think about how much Docker has changed over the past 4 years. But one of the things that has stayed constant for Docker sort of throughout all that time has been our logo, our beloved logo Moby. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of a 90-minute session about Docker in the enterprise, I wanted to share a little bit of the history of Moby. So, like most of the things that we did early in Docker's history, we were entirely community-driven, and that included how we designed Moby. So we didn't have a logo at the time. We ran a contest on 99 designs, and we asked the community to vote on which design they liked for the logo. And there was a great logo submitted by a talented artist named Ricky Osmanis out of Indonesia. And when we saw it, we said, oh, this is the logo for us, and we kept it, and we thought this would be our logo for life. But fortunately, we kept a hold of some of the older logos just in case we ever needed them. And it turns out that we might need them. And sort of let you know why. While we love Moby, most of our friends love Moby, we have been getting complaints about Moby from an animal rights group. And this is a true story. Apparently, we are exploiting our cartoon whale by making him carry containers that are a representation of a software construct. And obviously, we don't want to cause offense. I think the organization is something like People for the Ethical Treatment of Animated Logos or something like that. In any event, So we thought we'd look at some of our older logos and see, well, hey, maybe one of them would be a nice substitute. So these are all actual logos that were submitted about 4 years ago. So one logo had Moby as a dog. I kind of like it. Problematic, though, in that we're asking the dog to stay permanently, and we're not rewarding it with a live snap. We're rewarding it with a container. So that's probably exploitative. Another logo submission we had was a giraffe, which I kind of like. Although again, we're forcing the giraffe to exist without a neck, which is probably will cause it to starve. We did have a non-animal logo submitted, but again, we might be denying virtual squirrels their virtual acorns. So we decided, okay, can we think of some other logos that we were given that don't involve exploiting mammals? And so there are some more logos, but we want to make sure that these logos not only don't cause offense, but still convey the value of the Docker brand. So again, looking back at some of our older logos that were submitted, we have a Trojan horse. And gosh, I can't think of a better logo for a company that prides itself on security than a Trojan horse. Of course, Docker also prides itself on stability. And so I don't know what this is, but I'm guessing that's probably not the most important thing. So in any event, there is a reason why I shared all of these old logos with you. While the PETA story is true, there's another reason why we showed you all of these old logos. And to find out why, you'll have to wait to the end of a 90-minute talk about Docker in the enterprise. So quick recap of yesterday. We had a lot of important announcements about Docker for developers and Docker for operators, two of the very important stakeholders that Docker has. A lot of great announcements around things we're doing to make Docker better for developers, including desktop to cloud integration, and some very exciting announcements like Linux Kit and Moby. And you saw the great presentation by Diogo about how we have inherently secure orchestration. But what happens when you have lots of developers creating lots of applications that get deployed in lots of places, that are managed by lots of operators? In other words, what is it like when you are an enterprise? And so that's really today's keynote. It's all about Docker in the enterprise. And perhaps the most important thing to start out by saying about Docker in the enterprise is that Docker is in the enterprise. Since the last time we spoke at DockerCon last year, we've added about 300 Global 2000 customers, as well as a much larger number of smaller and mid-sized customers. And as you can see from these logos, these are all customers, we sort of cover the gamut, from service providers to healthcare companies, financial companies, tech, public sector, some public sector customers we can talk about, some we can't. And we're very humbled, actually, to have these kinds of customers this early in Docker's life cycle. And while we're very humbled and honored, it does seem to us that the acceleration is happening. And it's not just us that is seeing that acceleration. We've also had third-party validation of it. And sort of tell you a little bit of a story about a company called ETR. So ETR is a data analysis company. And they called us up about 2 years ago saying they had seen some really interesting trends. So to tell you a little bit more about what ETR does, they have a group of 3,000 CIOs and IT decision makers from across the Global 2000, and they survey them roughly every quarter, and then they report the results. And they ask people, hey, what are you planning to be spending on in areas like microservices, or they'll ask, what are you planning to spend money on in areas like infrastructure software or servers. And they then report those results, and they sell them to hedge funds and mutual funds, et cetera. And they called us up and they said, Docker, you guys are off the charts. And we said, well, what does that mean? And they said, well, we take these results, we're data scientists, and we chart the results. And just to sort of explain how they chart it, on the vertical axis, they chart what percentage of the CIOs and decision makers they speak to are adopting or going to adopt a particular technology or a particular vendor's technology. And then on the horizontal axis, they represent whether they're likely to increase, decrease, or stay about stable in terms of their spending. And so obviously, it's great to be in the upper right-hand corner, and they said that we were off the charts and in microservices, and that has continued over the course of the past 2 years to continue to go up and to the right, which is very exciting to us. But then they called us up about a year ago and said, hey, we're seeing something else interesting. When we ask people, what are they adopting for infrastructure software? What are they adopting for server software? These are the results that they're seeing as well. And this is very gratifying to us, but it also is confirming a notion that we've gotten for a while that, while a lot of people think of Docker and containers as something for the cool kids, for cool microservice applications that are all going to be run in the cloud, we know who we are. We know we're not that cool. And in fact, what we're seeing sort of across the board is that Docker is being used for great cutting-edge applications and great cutting-edge infrastructure, but also being used increasingly for more traditional applications and infrastructure. And part of this, I think, is supported by what I spoke about the last time we spoke, which is that Docker is being used for really interesting applications. Docker is being used to keep planes in the air. It's being used to keep trains running on time, to process billions of dollars of financial transactions. And if you think about these applications, they're important. Certainly, as Docker, it makes us even more cognizant of the need to be stable and secure. But most of these applications have been built up over the course of decades, and there's decades worth of learning and process and procedures that have been built behind them. And so when we speak to our customers, they say these are the important applications. This is what we're using Docker for. And as a result, we think it's really time to sort of help the world understand that the story that was told a couple years ago about bimodal IT really just isn't true. We're not going towards a world where there are cool new applications that are running on new infrastructure and old applications that are being allowed to slowly wither away on old infrastructure. But in fact, there's only one mode that matters, and that is fast. And whether we're talking about bringing new applications to the market, or whether we're talking about making it possible to more rapidly update and manage older applications that are critical, there really is only one mode that people want. Now, obviously, fastness needs to be combined with stability and security. But what we're seeing is that Docker and containers are not so much a discontinuity or a revolution, so much as they are part of enabling a journey. And that's enabling a journey that includes old apps and new apps. It includes old infrastructure and new infrastructure. And while we have plenty of customers who are using Docker to get started on things like IoT, or microservices, or big data, or even machine learning, about half of our customers are starting their journey on the other side. They're starting with their traditional apps. Now, that's not where their journey is going to end, but at least half of our customers are starting with their traditional apps. And you might ask, well, why would you start using things like Docker for traditional apps? Well, it turns out if you Dockerize an old app, a traditional app, without changing a single line of code, and without changing anything about your infrastructure, you can, for example, get anywhere between 50% and 5x greater infrastructure efficiency. And that's a great immediate win. Just by Dockerizing a traditional app, without changing a single line of code or changing an infrastructure, you can take a Windows 2003 application and start running it on a Windows 2016 server. Taking a traditional app, again, without changing a line of code, you can move that application from an old machine to a new machine, or from an older version of an OS to a newer version of an OS, or from an older data center to a newer data center, or quite frankly, skip the newer data center and move directly to the cloud. And that's a lot of great value that happens, again, without changing a single line of code. But the journey doesn't end there. The journey continues, and we've seen this time and time again with our customers. By Dockerizing their applications, that's also the first step towards treating them in a more agile way. So once you've Dockerized your traditional applications, you can start making them part of your supply chain. You can start making them part of your CI/CD processes. You can start getting better at and more agile and faster at making deployments. In fact, again, without changing a line of code, customers are reporting that they're deploying changes 3 times faster. And even that is not the end of the journey. A pattern that we've been seeing time and time again with our customers is that once they've Dockerized 4 or 5 applications, once they've built up some muscle memory around Docker and CI/CD, they then look across those applications and they say, hey, you know what? Each of these applications has an application layer. Has an authentication layer. Let's see if we can pull that out as its own container. Or a session layer. Let's see if we can pull that out as a common container. And so gradually, those monolithic applications, in an organic way, they don't get rewritten from scratch, but they get broken down organically into smaller and smaller pieces. And that's very exciting for us, because that means that Docker is not just something that makes you future-proof, it's actually something that makes you past-proof. And what we understand is that if something is going to be past-proof and future-proof, it needs to exist in a world that is diverse. We have to make Docker work in a world that has bare metal and virtual. It has to work in a world that has on-premise and cloud. It has to work in an environment where there's Linux and Windows, where we need to serve the needs of developers and operators, and work with applications that are traditional microservices and in the process of going from one to the other. That's the journey that Docker is looking to enable. And while it's always fun to talk about PowerPoint, I think it's even better to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, if you will. And so I'm very pleased to bring up on stage one of Docker's customers. This is a customer who runs one of the largest financial networks, has been working with Docker on this journey for 2 years, and has had really interesting learnings and great results. A fantastic person to speak to, who's running critical applications in a very diverse environment. Please join me in welcoming Swami Kosher Lakota from Visa to the stage.
Ben, how are you? Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Good luck.
Can we go one slide back, please? All right, good morning. Hopefully you're all having a good time. My name is Swami. First of all, I want to thank all of you who are Visa's customers. Thank you for your business. You are in good hands. Thank you. Let me get the safe harbor slide out. This is a disclaimer that basically says that do your own research. So I'm here to talk about Visa's strategy, the journey, and the progress that we are making, but more importantly, the lessons that we have learned. But let's talk about Visa first. We are one of the largest payment service providers. When we talk about being the largest, there are two ways to look at it. One, the reach of Visa, and the scale of Visa. When it comes to the reach of Visa, this is as global as you can get. 176 currencies, 3.1 billion cards issued. And when we think about scale, we process about 130 billion transactions and about $5.8 trillion worth of payment volume every year. So what's our strategy? Number one, we want to make electronic payments reachable to everyone and everywhere. That's very important to us because the more you digitize your currency, the more safe the world will be. So the countries that are digitizing and the economies that are digitizing their currencies are going to be more safer, and the world will be a better place. And the second goal that we have is we know we're not going to be able to do that all on our own. We are opening up our technology and our platform through APIs. If you're a developer, you can do a Visa developer search on your favorite search engine, and you will see how we are opening up our platform. And the third thing is, Solomon talked about yesterday, developer is at the center of what we do. The challenge that I have for the team is when a new employee starts on Visa, on the same day, that developer should be able to deploy code into production. And from an infrastructure perspective, we want to be able to have like just-in-time infrastructure, self-service. And we want to be able to do all of that with the highest amount of security and availability. When I talk to my peers and the development partners, I tell them, I like the developers. I want to enable you, provide self-service, but I don't want to talk to you. And they turn back and tell me, Swami, the feeling is mutual. So let's talk about what this talk is about. Ben already mentioned about speed. To me, it's about speed and, like what Ben said, efficiency. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, we will measure how we are doing against both of them. Let's roll the clock backwards for a couple of years. And this may be a story that you can resonate well with you as well. A few years ago, whether your workload is small or medium or large, we only have one solution. Virtualize it, put it on bare metal, we'll deal with it. To me, that's like taking a bare metal and then doing space division multiplexing, right? As much you can slice as possible, depending on your virtual to physical ratios, 40 up to 90. Now, when you look at the life cycle of that infrastructure after that it's deployed, when it comes to provisioning time, it may be anywhere from months to days. And it takes a lot of time to do patching. It's very painful. And from a tech refresh, it's very, very intrusive. And then overall, from a multi-tenancy perspective in the virtual environment, there's a lot of spacious customers. There's a lot of underutilization. Now, since that time, on a little side note, we have been investing a lot in automation. In infrastructure today, we have a lot more developers than ever in the organization. And I think that trend is continuing to change, not only at Visa, but across the board when I talk to my peers. Now, going back to a couple of years ago, while we're deploying virtualization, what's happening is the infrastructure footprint is growing. And the business is going global. And as a result of business being global, your change windows are shrinking. You cannot make any change. And then headcounts are not going at the same rate at which the infrastructure is growing. So what's the solution? Before I go to solution, let me talk about efficiency for a second. When I look at efficiency, there are two ways I look at it. One, the efficiency at the provisioning time, which is the one time, like the instant gratification that people want by getting their infrastructure quickly, is if you look at any 1 year, it takes 3 months from the equipment that arrived at the loading dock to the time you make that infrastructure available for business use. And at the same time, when you decided to decommission an infrastructure and take all the software off, and unplugging it and putting it into the loading dock, it could be anywhere from 1 to 3 months, and in some cases, it could be even longer than that. And as a result of it, your installs and deinstalls are like 50% waste. And then if you look at the runtime efficiency, after the equipment is deployed, and this is a research that we got from a company called Cloud Physics that you should check out, they have gathered from 30+ companies on how efficient the virtual infrastructure is. And the statistics show that nearly 90% of the infrastructure is less than 15% utilized. I'm sure you can do over-provisioning under the hood, but even if you do over-provisioning, it still is 45% max. And most of the stuff that's running on the virtual infrastructure is agents anyway. On top of it, there is no business value for the tech refresh. There is no business value for patching and maintenance. We would rather be giving business functionality than patching and maintaining. So we want to break this pattern with a technology. And among all the technologies, we picked Docker and microservices. When we looked at it, the perceived opportunity was, number one, developer productivity. And the second thing, which was very important to me, was how can we simplify the way we compose and deploy and manage the environment? There were a lot of choices that I had. I could do platform by platform, do it for Java, do it for .NET, do it for MongoDB. But we found that if I go with a container technology with microservices, we can do a standard and even a generic way to do it across the board, across all the workloads, and more importantly, third-party packages. Most enterprises have a lot of third-party packages. I don't want to wait for the third-party vendor to make their technology platform as a service. And the third one is time division multiplexing. We talked about space division multiplexing earlier. Now I can do time division multiplexing as well, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then overall, it felt like it's simple to manage. So we kind of jumped with our feet right in, and we picked two key services. One of them was an authorization platform, and another one is a risk decision system. And then we had to go through some key architectural decisions. The first one is, am I going to go with bare metal or virtual? And this was like a civil war among architects. And we finally went with bare metal solution. And the second decision that we had to make, there are a lot of options in the ecosystem. Which technologies do we use when it comes to discovery, load balancing, and so on and so forth? And the third one is, we're making a lot of progress on network and software-defined network at Visa. We were like deciding, should we wait for that to happen? Should we go with this? And we said that if we are going to wait, we'll be waiting forever. We said we'll go with what we have with Docker bridge networking at that time. And then more importantly, security. We got all the approvals required and validations from a security perspective. Now, after deploying this, we now have these two services in production for over 6 months. We are putting our cache traffic towards that one, and then about 100,000 transactions, and ability to go from 100 containers to 800 containers, and the clusters are deployed in multiple data centers in multiple regions. And you can actually go to one of those sessions this afternoon where we'll kind of give you details about some of the network decisions that we had to do. And then if you look at after this is done, from a developer perspective, the provisioning time is in seconds, not like the days with the virtual environment that we had. And then secondly, from a patching and maintenance, there's no need to patch. We can actually hang the hats. I like that image. And if you want to patch it, just redeploy the application. And the infrastructure is invisible. Our customers don't have to know any tech refresh. They don't need to know. And last and the most important, we have a lot of cozy customers, and we can do both time and space division multiplexing. Now let's talk about the lessons learned. The first one, which I'm sure probably a lot of people know, the granularity of the microservice is very important. Solomon talked about the image and the things that they're making to make the image size easy. And secondly, the memory footprint is very important. You could do microservices, but if your heap size is still big, you may not be using the best out of the microservices because memory, most of the applications and the infrastructure is now memory bound. So you got to manage your memory very well. And the third one is load balancing. We wish we had more features in load balancing, but overall, we're kind of happy with what we have with some primitive load balancing that we have. And lastly, operationalization is still work in progress in terms of hardening the platform and hardening the processes for supporting this environment. The good news is we have a blueprint on how to do this, and now we're expanding to 5 other application teams inside Visa. And one of them that I'm most excited about is the batch processing. So let's talk about the Visa roadmap. I'm a service provider for the developers inside Visa. So now I have like 4 options for our customers, internal customers. One, you could do the classic way, which is days for provisioning and a lot of pre-provisioning and post-provisioning high-touch activities. Or, Mr. Developer, you can go with infrastructure as a service, which is self-service. You'll get your image in a couple of hours. Or you can bring your own stack, and then we have a bunch of stacks that we already automated. Or you can bring your own service. And when you bring your own service, it'll be container-first architecture and implementation. And our view is that the more we move the workloads to the right, the better the efficiency is. In other words, the story is you can get a solution that will take days, or you get a solution that can be done within seconds. So it's interesting that yesterday's Ben's analogy was kind of the 1980s, gaming technologies that we all grew up with. When I talk about infrastructure and both space division and time division multiplexing, I use an analogy with my teams called as Tetris. As the workload comes in, it's like Tetris. You want to have various compute come in and go. And from a success perspective, speed, we can now measure in seconds. And from an efficiency perspective, I can actually correlate the containers with the actual business volume. With that, thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Thanks.
Wow, I love it. Tetris-like infrastructure. Except Tetris always eventually ended up not working for me and causing me to waste time, but that's not the case with Docker. So, Swami, thank you so much for sharing your learning, and sharing your wisdom about your journey. As I mentioned, Docker has been able to have the privilege of working with a lot of customers and learned lessons along the way. And while every customer has some unique aspects, we've sort of tried to boil it down into really 3 lessons in terms of how to think about deploying a Docker-based, a container-based environment that will scale, and as Swami was saying, help you move your workloads to the right. And there are really 3 lessons. Start with a secure base and make sure that that base understands and embraces the diversity of the environment. Make sure that you think not only about the base that you're putting in place, how you're going to create and deploy containers, but also what the entire supply chain looks like. How you move from development through test and build into production, how you build, ship, and run, and do that in a way that understands that you're going to be diverse. And third, and perhaps one of the most important aspects, is that you do that in a way that leverages the ecosystem. Yesterday I showed you a slide with some of the 400 companies that have built fantastic technologies around Docker, and that includes ISVs, that includes people who are doing advanced work in networking and storage and security and monitoring and management. And you want to leverage the broad variety of choices that you have today in terms of clouds or in terms of OSs or in terms of underlying hardware infrastructure. And so if you do this correctly, you'll start with a secure base, you'll secure the supply chain, and you'll leverage the ecosystem. So I want to sort of break this down a little bit into each of those stages. And I'll start with a diagram that we created initially to try and convey that level of diversity. So on the left-hand side, we've got developers. Right-hand side, we've got IT operators. And we tried to represent the fact that you've got some developers using microservices, some developers working with traditional apps. You're deploying to the cloud, you're deploying on-premise. But as we looked at this PowerPoint slide, we said, you know what, this really isn't particularly realistic. Let's see if we can make it look a bit more realistic, and so let's start with changing the icons for the applications. All right, so we've got our special little snowflakes, and this is helpful, but we also want to say, okay, we make this slide a little bit more realistic and reflect the ways in which, sort of in a pre-Docker environment, you get those applications deployed. And so we want to represent important tools that are at our disposal, like glue, we've got some chewing gum, we've got ourselves some duct tape, and as long as we're at it, let's represent those applications a little bit more realistically as script code. All right, so world is diverse. As we've been saying for the past several years, one great first step is to make sure that you start with secure base and containerize your apps. Of course, adding diversity into the mix means that we have to deploy a secure base that can work with different types of developers, work with different types of apps, work with Linux, work with Windows. And that secure base also needs to be able to work in an environment where some apps are going to be deployed on-premise, some are going to be deployed to the cloud, some in physical, some bare metal, some virtual. And the applications themselves, of course, have gotten more complex over the years, and we now need to make sure that we are dealing effectively and efficiently with things like network and security and volumes and distributed state. It's far broader than just a runtime. And so what you heard yesterday in Solomon's talk was a lot of what we are doing both with these individual components in order to enable things like persistent storage, and make sure that networking can work in a more diverse environment, but also how we can package this all up in a way that has integrated security, that is secure by default, and how we can package this all up in a way that works in different environments. And so a couple months ago, we launched Docker Editions, which is basically our way of taking all of these various boxes and making sure that we deliver a solid engine and a Docker basic engine that can work for Mac, that can work for Windows on the development side, and work in a variety of places for different types of infrastructures. Well, starting with that secure base is the start, but it's not the end. Of course, we need to somehow replace all of that chewing gum and spit and baling wire and cursing, et cetera, with something that looks a bit more like a supply chain. And if you were here last year, we introduced this notion of CAS, or Container as a Service. And this is basically saying you want to have tools and processes in place to have the applications that have been built as containers, to be deployed as containers, but have a way that connects the developers and the IT operations, which includes technologies like a secure image registry, a control plane that lets you monitor and manage and deploy the containers in a heterogeneous environment. We called this CAS, Container as a Service, because as you'll notice, there are no logos on this slide. We are not defining or forcing standardization around infrastructure. That's IaaS. You'll notice that there are no logos on the left-hand side. We're not making statements about what tools and languages and frameworks should be used in your development environment. No, that's PaaS. As we like to say, IaaS is too low, PaaS is too high, and CAS is just right. Or the sort of PG-13 version of that, IaaS is great, PaaS is great, but make sure you don't end up getting your ads put in a sling as you're going through this process. So it's one thing to make it very easy and efficient to have applications and services represented as containers that get deployed, but how do you make intelligent decisions about whether they should be deployed and where they should be deployed? And that's where we sort of extend this notion of a supply chain to focus on the fact that the supply chain itself needs to have end-to-end security. And so I'll focus for a moment on securing the process that goes from the development to build, from the left-hand side to the center. Now again, you're starting with the fact that your developers, regardless of the type of applications they're building, are using a secure base. But what most of our customers end up doing is putting in place automated processes and procedures and enforcing those through the use of digital signatures. And so to sort of give a trivial example, in most of our customers' environments, as soon as the developer commits a change to source, a new container is built automatically and it gets digitally signed. So we now know where the container came from, we know that it hasn't been changed, we know who produced it, we can trace it all the way back to a particular version of source code. As it runs through automated tests or through the CI system, a second signature is applied, so we know that it's passed all the tests. The magnifying glass that you have up there represents the Docker scanning service, and we recommend that you use the scanning service. It will scan all of your images against a database that includes about 100,000 known vulnerabilities. Obviously, you want to make sure that while you can't prevent unknown vulnerabilities, at least you are not putting known vulnerabilities, so we can at least deal with the known knowns. After Docker applies its security scanning, most companies apply additional checks, additional security processes, again, all enforced with digital signatures. And at that point, what you have in the center is a set of applications and services that have gone through a process and now can be deployed. And the trick to deployment is not that there's then a set of individual decisions that are made. There's, the IT operator is not put in a position of still having to say no. Instead, you deploy based off of policy. And so, for example, you would put in place a policy that says nothing goes into production that has major vulnerabilities, nothing goes into production that hasn't been signed. But you might also want to say anything that is tagged with the PII tag, that it has personally identifiable information, won't go to the public cloud. Or anything that has a particular resource profile won't go to a particular part of our infrastructure. This allows you to be secure, but also to scale efficiently. And as you might imagine, under the hood, there are a lot of interesting things that are at play. We have sessions covering almost all of these, like policy management and the private registry and content trust and verification. But I think the important thing to get across in this setting is that we bring it all together and that we have three major philosophies that we put in place, principles we put in place as we're looking about security. First of all, that security should be usable. You shouldn't have to think or have things like mutual TLS happen. They should happen by default. Secondly, it is as important to worry about trusted delivery as it is about a secure end state. It's great to make sure that a bad container doesn't impact another container, and we do a lot of work in that field. But also the importance of the supply chain is that you minimize the chances that you deploy a bad container in the first place. And if you do deploy a bad container, if you've deployed something that passed all the checks at the time, but then a new vulnerability is discovered, it's easy to understand where you're exposed and remedy the situation. And finally, I'm sure you could have anticipated this, you want to make sure that you're doing this in a way that respects diversity. And while individual platforms do great things to enhance security, and you should absolutely take advantage of them, and we try to make sure that Docker can take advantage of the security capabilities of every platform we run on, we don't think that your security should be dependent on you staying on a particular platform or a particular architecture. All right, so this is a lot of slides. My guess is you're probably itching for a demo. So do you guys want to see a secure supply chain in action? Yeah. Woo! All right. Well, if you were here last year, you may recall we had Lily, the developer, and Vivek, the ops guy. In last year, they were, as you might recall, trying to deal with a crisis, and having solved that crisis, they were able to go off to Burning Man. So I'd like to welcome them back from Burning Man. So if Lily and Vivek can come on stage, and I will also be reprising my role. Hey guys. Good to see you. All right, good luck. And I should mention, I will be reprising my role as the clueless business guy. This is not just a role I play on TV, it's also one that I do in real life. So take it away, Lily and Vivek.
I'm so glad we were able to make it to Burning Man. After that last crisis, I really needed this vacation. Anyways, time to get back to my job of writing enterprise software as a developer.
Yep, and time for me to get back to my ops role of managing workloads, fighting outages at 2 a.m., and generally trying to keep the business guys away from my clusters.
I think you spoke too soon. Here comes Ben, the business guy.
Hey, Lily, and hey, ops guy. It's great to see you guys. Hope you had a fun time at Burning Man, and really happy that you're adhering to our corporate Wacky Wednesday dress code. I was trying to think of ways that I could add value to you, and I think I've come up with something that's not just value add, it's like value multiplying. I hired a contractor to totally rewrite our payment gateway. He's submitted the code. For some reason, it hasn't gone into production. What gives?
So a contractor, does he know like our code base and our best practices and everything?
I don't know about that, but he's got a great LinkedIn profile. In fact, I think he describes himself as a 20x programmer. And he's worked for great companies like Fungible Fill-ins Incorporated or Mythical Man Month and Associates. So, in fact, I think he was actually up at Burning Man. Unlike some people, he was actually coding while he was up there. You may actually remember him. This is a picture of him. All right, well, listen. I know he submitted great code, so guys, just get it up and get it running. I've got to go add value somewhere else.
Hey, Vivek, I feel like I did see that guy at Burning Man, and he was typing a lot. If he was working out there, I'm starting to get really worried about this code.
No, it's okay. My guess is the secure supply chain I built using Docker automatically caught some error and prevented the app from going to production. All we need to do is figure out what's going on. So enough Burning Man for now. It's time for us to get to work. So this is the registry where the devs store the images they create, and ops use those to run apps in their cluster. If the contractor pushed some code, it would have run through our CI/CD process and ended up here. Since it's the payments gateway, it would have gone to payments dev, but we only allow code on our prod clusters to come from the prod repo, so let's check payment prod. Check the images. Doesn't look like there's anything here. So let's go back and check payment dev.
Oh, that must be it. Can't we just move it from dev to prod and deploy it? I mean, Ben seemed like he was in a hurry.
No can do. Security policy FN-2187. There's so many devs trying to push code to our platform that we need our automated supply chain to act as a gatekeeper. So check it out. You see the policies tab here in the repo. You see here it says target repository admin payment prod. That means that when an image comes into this repo, it has to meet the criteria in that policy. If it does, it's automatically promoted to the payment prod repo. So let's take a look at the policy. We can see here it says critical vulnerabilities equals 0. That means the Docker security scanning service scans the image and has to find no critical vulnerabilities for it to be promoted to prod. So let's take a look at the scanning report.
Whoa, that is a lot of vulnerabilities. Let's click on the full report. So Docker security scanning does a binary scan of an image layer by layer and then gives us a full list of vulnerabilities. What's weird here is that all the vulnerabilities seem to be in the first layer, which should be coming from the base image. But we run all of our stuff on Alpine, and the latest version is definitely secure. Let me take a look at his Docker file. He's using Alpine 2.7. That's actually pretty out of date. This must be why. At least it's an easy fix. I'll just up this to Alpine 3.5, which is the latest version. And then I'll build a 1.1 version of his app, and I'll push it. Done.
OK, now that you've pushed it to the registry, it should automatically rescan again. So let's take a look. We can see here the 1.1 version is here. And since you added the new Alpine layer, it's clean. So that should meet the policy. Let's see if it got automatically promoted to prod. Yep, you can see here that you see the promoted tag on the 1.1 image. So the registry looked at the policy, found that it met the criteria from the scanning, and automatically promoted it from dev to prod.
OK, looks good. Let's deploy it.
All right, let's run this on the cluster. So this is the management dashboard for the cluster. You got your resource metrics, you got your nodes, your services, your containers. It's really
Dude. Vivek, you already told me all of this during last year's keynote. This year, let's just deploy it.
Nobody gets the ops guy. All right, let's go ahead and deploy this. We know this app has a database, a payments gateway, and a web application front end. So we can use Docker Compose to deploy this as a group of services. I'll just need to add in an admin password for the database.
Wait, are you just going to put the password in like an environmental variable or a volume mount? That's pretty insecure.
No, of course not. Look, I follow Diogo on Twitter too, you know. I'll inject it as a compose file. I'll make it into a secret and then inject it directly into the compose file. But to do that, I'll need to create the secret first on the cluster. So we're going to go to the Resources tab, then to Secrets. And you can see here that there's already a payments token for the payments gateway secret, but I need to create one for the database. So let's go ahead and create database password. I'll use my favorite password. There we go. Let's create. So now the secret is stored securely on the cluster, and it's only accessible to the container that gets it. So now let's go ahead and actually create the application. To do that, I'm going to go to the Stacks and Applications tab. And then we're going to go ahead and hit Deploy. I'm going to call this Art Store. And we need a compose YAML file. So I have one set up for just this occasion. So I'll just go ahead and copy that in. And we've seen this all before, so I can just go ahead and hit deploy, right?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Don't hit that button.
Too late.
But I was reading the 1-minute IT manager, and it said that I'm supposed to add value before you deploy. So what have you done?
I deployed the template.
Deploy the template. So that's like one of those things that you can use to like draw like shapes and stuff like that.
With a couple more bits and bytes, sure.
Oh, cool. Okay, so
want to take a
help me
look?
out here. Let me take a look.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at the template. So you can see here that this is a Docker
text. All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
You can see here that this is a Docker Compose file. We have 3 different services. We got the database, that's Microsoft SQL Server. We got the application server, that's the front end.
Okay.
And we have the payments gateway. We also have the networks that connect all three of these, the overlay network, as well as the secrets we injected into the file.
That's really cool, but let me ask you a question. The front end is Linux.
Yep.
And the back end is Microsoft SQL Server?
On Windows, yeah.
On Windows? You're combining Linux and Windows? That's like combining horizontal and vertical integration in the same value-added strategy. You just can't do stuff like that.
Actually, Ben, with Docker, we can. We've been running on a hybrid Windows-Linux cluster this whole time. So let's take a look and see how that works.
Okay.
So we're done creating this. Let's go ahead and go to the Nodes tab within the cluster. I'm going to sort this by OS type. You can see here that we have 4 workers, 2 that are running Windows, and then 2 workers that are running Linux.
So are those like full-time or part-time workers?
Pretty sure they're full-time, Ben.
Okay.
And we also have, for high availability purposes, 3 Linux managers.
Oh, managers. Ooh, I like that.
Well, like some managers I know, they're adding value through redundancy. So let's go ahead and take a look at the actual tasks. I'll click on the Windows worker and click on Tasks. You can see here that Microsoft SQL Server is running on the Windows node. And you can see here, when we go to the Linux node, that both the payments gateway as well as the art store are running on the Linux node. So now let's look at this application holistically. So to do that, I'm going to go back to the Stacks and Applications tab. You can see the stack for Art Store 1. And if you look here, you can see that there's 3 services and the networks we used on this application. So we have the database, the application server, and the payments gateway. So with just one click in a compose file, we have a hybrid Windows Linux application running on our hybrid Windows Linux cluster.
Ooh.
Cool, guys. So what is this enterprise software we just deployed?
OK, let's take a look. We'll go to the app server page, wait for this to load. And let's take a look at what the enterprise art store looks like. Let's take a look at what the enterprise art store looks like.
Wow, very inspirational. That's quite enterprisey. But again, you were combining Linux and Windows in the same application?
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That is like adding synergy both inside and outside of the box simultaneously. I'm just super, super impressed. You guys did a great job.
Honestly, Ben, with Docker, it just works.
All right, so we just saw, again, a secure supply chain where we were able to work with an application and deploy it, applying policy. And again, if we'd taken this demo further, if at some point in the future there'd been some vulnerability found in Alpine 3.5, using the scanning service, we would have detected that and would have been able to quickly remediate it. Now, I'm going to make a quick confession here. I left my clicker down there in my haste to run up, so I'm going to come down and get it. All right. So having a secure supply chain is fantastic. In this demo, we were using applications that were built and deployed entirely internally. But what we know is that the reality is that most enterprises want to leverage a mix of technologies. They want to leverage applications that are built in-house as well as those that come from third parties. And they want to be able to use Docker in conjunction with, let's say advanced networking from people like Cisco, or advanced storage from people like NetApp. And so we wanted to make it possible for you to take that secure supply chain and enhance it with the ecosystem and make sure that the ecosystem also fits into the secure supply chain. So probably not surprising to you if you saw the Docker store announcement about a month ago. We've created a large and growing library of third-party software, which is all signed and scanned, made available, of course, certified to run on Docker infrastructure, on all Docker infrastructure, that can be pulled into your environment, and again, go through the same supply chain in terms of decisions about deploying or not. What I think is important is not only that this has been applied to third-party software, but we've really taken this notion of certification across the entire supply chain. So it sort of starts with the Docker Enterprise Edition. So the Docker Enterprise Edition brings together all the components we talked about earlier, but is also tested and tailor-made for individual environments. So Docker for Amazon is tested and deployed to take advantage of all the capabilities of Amazon. Docker for Azure is deployed and designed in order to take advantage of all the advantages of Azure. But they're also designed so that you can move applications from one place to the other. They're also released along a cycle with a level of stability that allows the things that are going to sit above the enterprise editions to be tested and certified. So as a result, if you go to the Docker store and you see all of the applications that are there, those are all certified to run on all of the Docker certified enterprise editions. And that means that there is a contract that exists between Docker and the ISV and you as the customer that says these things should work consistently across Docker enterprise editions. And if there is an issue, we won't be pointing fingers. Using collaborative support techniques through TSA, Docker and the vendors will work together. I'm sure you've all been in a situation where vendors point fingers at each other. I actually had a boss who said, you know, if you continue to point fingers, I'm going to cut them off. But that only worked 10 times. We want to make sure that you're not exposed to that. We also want to make sure that, again, as you look to deploy advanced networking or advanced storage, or all of the tools that are out there in the infrastructure, in the ecosystem, that those are also available as certified plugins, again, tested against all Docker Enterprise editions. Now, we're really excited when we went live. We felt that we'd done a great job of covering most of the major infrastructures, most of the major clouds, most of the major OSs. But there have been a lot of expansions that have happened since we launched, and actually, there are some important ones to talk about this week. So, very excited to announce with IBM that Docker is now available, Docker Editions and Docker Data Center for Linux, for Z systems and Power Series. So, if you like mainframes, we'll work with you. If you like 32-bit, we'll work with you. As we sort of like to say, we now work from ARM to Z. Really encourage you to go by the IBM booth to learn more about this. And if you're also interested in learning about cool new things, we've also got some interesting experiments about Docker working with Watson. We've also expanded the network of clouds that we work on. Very excited a couple of weeks ago to announce Docker editions for Google Compute Platform. So do we have GCP fans in the audience? Whew. So we're running on all of the 3 major clouds in the US, but we're also going beyond that. So I know people know that everything is bigger in Texas, but everything is really big in China. And Alibaba is the largest by far public cloud provider in China. They also happen to be the largest e-commerce site and the largest search engine. And they've been working with Docker to make a localized version of Docker, not just localized in terms of language, but localized in terms of capabilities, available not only on Alibaba Cloud, but also through their on-premise offering, which is Apsara Stack, and are actively selling with Docker in the China market, making it possible for some of the largest banks and telcos and insurance companies to run workloads in a Dockerized way, both on-premise and in Alibaba, and to move in between. That's very exciting for us. We are very excited not only because Alibaba is a distribution partner for Docker, but also because they're one of our largest users. So I think I mentioned to you that Alibaba runs the largest e-commerce site in China. They have built that using Docker and now have over 300,000 containers deployed, which I think is pretty impressive. Now, I'm not sure how many people in the audience have heard of Singles Day. That's November 11th. That has become the largest shopping day in China, and it absolutely dwarfs Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Black Friday and Cyber Monday involve about $5 billion worth of transactions each. Singles Day, over $20 billion of merchandising happens online in one day. And over 60% of that happens through Alibaba. And that all happens through an infrastructure that has been built by Docker and that supports over 175,000 transactions per second. So to have a partner like Alibaba not only help Docker sell into the market, but also give us the learnings about running Docker at massive scale is a really very impressive thing. And so we're very grateful to our friends at Alibaba for helping us out. And we also know that for enterprises to go live, it's not just a matter of having technology partners. So beyond the Docker Certified program, we also have a big network of service providers, consultants, technology partners to help you implement Docker. This includes some fantastic global systems integrators and federal system integrators. I encourage you to come by their booths. Since we've been talking a lot about traditional applications, I really encourage you to go see Accenture. They've built an entire practice called the App Migration Factory that involves the use of Docker and can help move lots of older applications into a secure supply chain. We're also very excited that Docker is now being distributed through partners who are integrating Docker into their products, and not only integrating the technology and creating Docker editions, but also offering integrated support. So if you have an issue, as they say, you have one throat to choke, and you get to choose whether you want to choke ours or somebody else's. All right, well, we've talked a lot about building out an ecosystem and leveraging the ecosystem, but my guess is you probably want to see another demo. Am I right? So with that, I'd like to ask Vivek and Lily to come back to the stage and demonstrate deploying third-party applications and very traditional applications into their Docker system. Lily and Vivek? Hey guys, really excited to have you back. By the way, I'm now Clueless Business Guy again, so great to see you, Lily, and great to see you, Ops Guy. That enterprise art store was just incredible, and we've found a way that we can take it even bigger. We've got a cross-promotional marketing and monetization maximization strategy. We have acquired the assets of one of the leading e-commerce companies of the 1990s. Their apps are a little bit traditional, but they are still the market leader in Moldova, and they have a cool sock puppet mascot. So I'd like to see if you can take their apps. Our CIO said that you can like Tupperwareize them or containerize them or something like that and get them up and running. Is that possible?
Yeah, that sounds doable.
Oh man, that's the kind of A-player cross-functional value add I love to see. Only issue is we forgot to negotiate for the power supplies, so their data center is going to be going dark in about an hour. So if you wouldn't mind, can you please get the apps put together, rewritten into containers and into prod?
Sounds good.
I think you can do that? All right, well, I'll let you get to it. I've got like RFPs and MOUs and TPS reports to work on.
What about the actual tech specs for the app?
Oh, the tech specs. Well, I sent them to you using our very modern e-messaging system, so hopefully you can get to work on them.
An hour. That's an arbitrarily short period of time.
You've got mail.
That's appropriate. So let's take a look at this. Wait, this is a LAMP stack in a VMDK. That's a VM disk image, and it's connected to an Oracle DB. There's no way we can get that containerized in an hour. I can't make the CIO angry again. Did you see what he did to my leg the last time?
Dude, it's going to be fine. Relax. With Docker's tools, we can definitely do this.
My leg.
Seriously, it's going to be fine. Come on. Let's do this one step at a time. So the first thing we need to do is convert the traditional LAMP stack VM into a container. I'm just going to run image to Docker to do this.
So what's image to Docker again?
So what Ben gave us was a VMDK, a VM disk image that holds this web app. And image to Docker is an open source tool that can extract the web app from the VMDK and create a Docker file for it.
Doesn't it require any kind of code changes or something?
Nope. Image to Docker just creates a Docker file. See? There it is.
Pretty cool.
Now I can just build this Docker file and push it. Yep. Just like that, we converted a VM into a container.
Look, so that's great, but what about Oracle DB? Now, it's a solid database, don't get me wrong, but you can't containerize that right now.
I bet you $20 I can.
$20.
Yep.
You're on. Easy money. Look, you can't containerize Oracle DB. And even if you somehow could get into a container, there's no guarantee that it would be tested and compliant with our Docker infrastructure.
Wrong and wrong. Not only is Oracle DB already containerized, it's actually an official product on the Docker store. And so are all these other containerized Oracle apps. So let's take a look. Here we go. Oracle DB in a container.
$20.
Thank you. All right, so now that it's already on the store, I can just pull it. I can just pull it from the store registry. And then I'll tag it.
Pretty fat pipe there. That's good.
And push it.
All right. So now that you've pushed it to the registry, it should go through the same secure supply chain as our other apps. So let's take a look at the database prod to see if it actually got promoted. You can see here we have the promoted tag, so we know that it went through the same secure supply chain and compliance as our other apps, and it's ready to go. So let's go ahead and actually run this on the cluster. So back to the cluster, we're going to deploy this again as a compose app with a series of services. I'm going to call this the 90 store. And let's go back. I have another YAML file for just this occasion. So taking a look at this YAML file, you can see here that it's got the traditional 90 store front end that we just containerized from a VM image. And it also has Oracle DB running in a container and the network that connects them. So let's go ahead and create. Now it's creating the networks, the services.
Nice.
Yeah, so just like that, we have a Docker app consisting of a VM image you containerize, as well as Oracle DB running in a container.
Hey guys, I've got some great news. I realize it was probably unfair to ask you to rewrite and containerize and deploy a whole new app in an hour. So using some super secret skills I learned from reading Getting to Maybe, I've gotten you an entirely new 15 minutes in order to deploy.
Actually, Ben, we're good. We already deployed it.
You're good. So you mean you got Oracle up and running?
Yeah, Vivek, can you see if we can hit it?
Yep.
So Oracle actually partnered with Docker and containerized a bunch of their apps. They're all officially products on the Docker store. So we didn't actually have to do anything. We just pulled it, pushed it to our registry, and deployed it. It's been super, super easy. See?
Oh.
Oracle DB in a container.
That is very cool. But what about our security policy? I don't know, it's like FN or NFW, something like that, 2187?
That's FN-2187. And yep, it ran through our secure supply chain, so it's good to go.
Wow, wow, that is very impressive. But what did we deploy?
Oh, let's take a look and see. So let's go to the 90 store page, the stack file. Again, you can see we have the two services that we created here. So I'll go to the traditional front end. Let's wait for that to load really quickly. And that's our 90s art store.
Whoa! What's up?
Radical, dude.
Oh, radical, man. That thing, that is the Shazinergy. That is amazing. All right, well, hey, guys, this is amazing. Thank you so much. I can totally see why we spent $1.5 billion to acquire this company. This is great.
Well, looks like our job here is done.
All right, thanks. I don't know. I think I'm going to leave this up for a little while. All right, so in case you missed it, one of the major aspects of that demo was the reveal that Oracle has made the decision to put a large library of their applications, including Oracle DB and WebLogic and others, in the Docker store. We think this is a milestone, not only for Oracle and Docker, but also for how the industry will be deploying software. And to talk a little bit more about that, I'd like to invite Mark Cabbage up on stage. Mark, please join me. Good luck, Rick. All right, thanks.
All right, thank you, guys. It is awesome to be here. On a personal note, I apparently just got to wear a cowboy hat and pet a plastic cow. I don't think that's something I'll get to repeat anytime soon. Seriously, though, as Oracle, we are thrilled to be here. You just saw the Oracle database running inside Docker at the DockerCon keynote. We think this is awesome. So I'm here to tell you what you saw, why you saw it, and what you might see next. So Oracle Dockerized. What does that mean? That means a couple things. First of all, any software that Oracle certifies for Docker is now first class for us. We will support you running Oracle software inside Docker. What software are we talking about? Well, Oracle has some, you know. We got a database. Perhaps you've heard of that. We got a little language people use from time to time. Seriously, Oracle software powers the bedrock of enterprise applications. We power millions of applications across the world. So we took the hard stuff, the foundational components that power that. So Oracle Database, the Oracle Application Stack, WebLogic, Coherence, etc., Java, Oracle Linux, these are all certified now inside Docker. So that's one. Second, we've made that. Awesome. I got one more. I got two more. All that software is available inside the Docker store. What does that mean for you? That means you can get it in the place you expect to get it from Docker. You can get it and use it the way you expect to use it, using standard Docker run, standard Docker pull commands. Also, you guys are all developers, right? We want to make this easy for you. So we're putting all of the software in the Docker store today. It is free for you to use for dev and test purposes. Call us when you want to go to production. Call us when you want support. Why did we do this? That's probably the obvious question you guys are asking now. It's simple. Our software is used by millions of people today. We want it to be used by millions of people tomorrow, billions of people tomorrow. At the end of the day, modern application authors are developers. They're the decision makers. Developers decide. It doesn't matter if you're talking about startups, if you're talking about enterprises, if you're talking about governments. Developers decide what they want to use. We know that. We see it every single day. Developers have decided on Docker, right? Docker is now the standard. It's how people consume apps. It's how they deploy apps, how you build, test, package apps. So it's great. Oracle wants to Dockerize. We want our software to be used by lots of people. We Dockerized. Why do we go to the Docker store? Why not put it somewhere else? Two reasons. Ben and Solomon said yesterday that Docker had 6 billion pulls last year. That is awesome. You're an ISV. Like, how do you possibly ignore that? Right? That is just like a resounding endorsement of Docker's ubiquity. So it's everywhere. We want our software to be used by as many people as possible. We want to make it easy for you to use it, make sure you can use it in a modern way. So we did that. Second, turns out when you have to support software, it can be hard. As an example, I mentioned WebLogic, right? We put that out there. WebLogic is used by an awful lot of people for an awful lot of things. When we looked in Docker Hub, there were over 80 versions of WebLogic there. How should you know what to use? How should we know what to fix? The Docker store offers a great solution for all of us, right? You, the consumer, get some guarantee of quality. You're certified by Docker and certified by Oracle that our software will work as you expect. We get to know that you're using the software we intended, right? We know what to fix. So honestly, the Docker store is just a great solution for all of us. So we're really excited about this. You're going to see a lot more from us over the next year. You're going to see more from us around what we're doing in the Docker store, both in terms of our content. You're going to see more from us in terms of how we work with the Docker store. You're going to see more from us with Docker around products and open source in general. And you're going to see a lot more from us around Docker Cloud products. As an example, we just announced that we're acquiring Worker. You should stop by the booth and say hi to them. Those guys are awesome. They have a great Docker-focused CI/CD service. You stop by, say hello to the Docker Cloud guys, or the Oracle Cloud guys that run Docker, sorry. And we got a bunch of demos of the store content. And lastly, head to the talk this afternoon, Docker Store, the new destination for enterprise software. We'll have some more details there. Thank you all very much. Thanks, Ben.
All right, thank you again, Mark. As you can gather, Docker at DockerCon is making a lot of noise about not only Dockerizing microservices, but also modernizing how to use Docker to modernize traditional applications. We wanted to make it very easy for you to do this. For many customers, again, this is where their journey starts. Well, it's not where their journey ends. We've found time and time and again that this is a great way to get quick wins that don't involve changing a lot of things and that enable the usage of Docker and other technologies to expand more rapidly. So we are proud to announce today the Docker Modernized Traditional Apps program. We were going to call it the MTA program until people from New York said, hey, that's a subway and it'll run you over. But it's intended to help you accelerate the portability, security, and efficiency of your applications. It's a turnkey program, basically 5 applications, 5 days, a mix of consulting and Docker Enterprise, and the ability to demonstrate moving those applications from one infrastructure to another or to a hybrid cloud infrastructure. And it's delivered not only by Docker, but through our key partners, that include Avanade, Cisco, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and Microsoft. We're very excited and happy to have them joining us. And as you can imagine, because we have Avanade and Microsoft there, this program not only works for traditional Linux applications, but also for modernizing and upgrading .NET applications on Windows. So thanks to all of our partners. In case you don't want to wait and you want to start getting your hands dirty with modernizing traditional applications, we have a set of trials for you. We have a set of workshops for you. And in fact, if you come to the Docker booth and try modernizing a .NET app, you can get your hands on this sweet and slightly retro Docker t-shirt, which includes all of the old logos, which is why I showed them to you at the beginning of the session. So please come by. Please try things out. But the gates are not open yet because we have one more use case to walk through, one more customer to walk through. And this is a customer whose story I find really inspirational because it brings together almost everything we've talked about today. They're dealing with old applications and newer applications. They're dealing with some applications from the 60s and some applications that were built over the past couple of years. They are working on-premise, and they're working in the cloud. They're working with Linux. They're working with Windows. But perhaps most importantly, they're providing vital services to 100 million customers, literally on issues that impact life and death. And so it's my distinct pleasure to welcome to the stage Aaron Ades, AVP of Solution Engineering at MetLife.
Wow, DockerCon. MetLife, an insurance company at DockerCon. Thanks for having me, Ben. You know, yesterday I couldn't help noticing that you said Docker just turned 4, right? And I was thinking that, wow, next year it's a really big year for you guys. And likewise, MetLife has got a big milestone next year, too. Like, you guys are turning 5. We're turning 150 years old next year, in April of next year. MetLife's an old company. We're a big company, too. Right? We've got 100 million customers, and we operate in nearly 50 countries. We sell all kinds of things: life insurance, home insurance, auto insurance, dental, disability. And if you think about it, all these products are nothing more than a promise, right? A promise that says if you pay a small premium, that MetLife will be there to make you financially whole in the event of some catastrophe, right? That could be a car accident, a root canal, or God forbid, an untimely death in the family. And if you think about what a promise is, it's nothing but a little bit of information. So we've been in the information management business for 150 years. And over that period of time, we've had to make strategic bets on technology to stay ahead of our competition. And what I want to talk about today is how we're making a similar bet on Docker to make us more agile and nimble and to stay ahead of our competitors. So MetLife was founded in 1868. That's 3 years after the end of the Civil War. And high technology of that day was the universal stock ticker. Right? That first year of operation, we sold almost 1,500 policies with a face value of about $4 million. By the 1920s, we're paying death claims by telegraph. Right? And we're paying over 1,000 claims a day. In an 8-hour workday, that's 1 out of every 28 seconds. And then by the 1950s, our business is so computationally complex that we're the first company in the entire industry to invest in large-scale computing. And we buy one of these things. It's a UNIVAC machine. And this continues into the 1980s, where we write our first consolidated claims application for the entire business, and we shove it into an IBM mainframe. 1982 ends up being a pivotal year for MetLife because there is code that is running in production today that was written in 1982, right? 35 years old. And I've been at DockerCon for a couple of days, and I know what the audience looks like. So show of hands, like who wasn't even born, let alone coding 35 years ago? And then in 2000, MetLife becomes a public company. right? And this fuels another wave of growth, right? We acquire new businesses. We expand into emerging and developing markets. We go into adjacent businesses. And what we end up with by the first part of this decade is over 400 systems of record spread around the world. These things are running on anything: IBM mainframes, AS400, Windows, Linux. And anyone who's had to deal with a legacy system knows it's hard, right? Refactoring code or even integrating with a single legacy system is a project. It takes time, it takes money, it takes resources, let alone dealing with dozens of these things all over the world. But you know what? Your customers don't care. They want to come to a website and they want to see everything about your business relationship on a single screen. And they want to call into a call center and talk to someone who can likewise see a holistic view of everything that you do with them. Your sales agents, they want to treat your customers holistically. They want to upsell. They want to cross-sell. And this is really hard when you have to deal with all this legacy, let alone deliver a user experience on something like an iPad or an iPhone or a screen of any size. So about 3 years ago, MetLife hired a new chief architect for the company to kind of solve some of these problems. And I'm not sure, but he might have spent some time here in Austin at these wonderful establishments down on 6th Street or like Rainey Street where the party was last night, because as you'll see, like this strategy has this kind of weird Texas feel to it, right? So it's a 3-part strategy. And phase 1 is you've got to wrap your systems of record in a layer of microservices. Just like a layer of bacon will make almost anything taste better, microservices will likewise make all of your legacy apps more palatable, right? So it's something about breaking that business logic into little tiny pieces that makes you more nimble, makes you do things like differentially scale. It just makes your systems of record much more easy to deal with. Step 2, you need to tap into the data stores on those systems of record. And what you're looking to do is modernize the way you access the data. You can use a number of technologies to do this, from APIs for your data to big data like Hadoop to NoSQL. It doesn't matter, but what's important is that you're providing a layer of abstraction, right? Your developers shouldn't care what it looks like on the back end, right? They don't need to know whether it's a DB2 database running on a mainframe or MySQL running on Linux. As long as they can get the data flowing efficiently and securely, you're going to be well ahead. And once you've dealt with the data and your microservices have really come to parity with those old monolithic applications, you turn them off, right? You send them to the scrap heap. So that's it, right? A strategy for dealing with your legacy system, really, in 3 words: wrap, tap, and scrap. And what you end up with is something that looks like this, right? A modern UI that shows a holistic view of your customer relationship. It can be rendered on an iPad, it can be rendered on an iPhone, a laptop. But the cool thing is that with something like this, we're pulling data from systems that were written in different decades, in different languages, right? On completely different platforms. And it's like Docker is this time machine that lets us violate the space-time continuum and like create this giant mashup across the decades. So not only is like that user experience story cool, but the economic story is also really cool. So with Docker and microservices, we're much more easily able to move our workloads to the cloud, right? And deal with things like scalability issues. So for a couple of months every year, we force every single one of our customers or our group customers to come back during open benefits enrollment season. You know, this is when through your employer, you go to all your benefits providers and you say, yes, I want the same coverage as last year, or no, I need to increase my coverage or update my beneficiaries. This causes a 25x increase in traffic over normal time periods in the rest of the year. It sounds like a perfect problem for the cloud, right? There's no mainframe in the cloud, but a layer of microservices that are Dockerized can easily be moved up into Azure. We're also finding out that it takes a lot less machines to run our applications. In some extreme cases, we're seeing almost 70% consolidation, right? That's buku dinero. That's a lot of money that we're saving. And finally, our operations teams are seeing massive leverage from the orchestration and automation technology that's built into Docker Data Center. Things that used to be hard, like scaling a service from 2 to 10 or 100 instances, are now easy. I think there's probably 80% of the people in this room can write me a single command that will do this in seconds or minutes in a Docker cluster. Likewise, if you have a hardware failure or a VM crashes, those workloads are already rescheduled and running somewhere else by the time an alert pops up on that ops console. But my favorite part of this story is really the people side, right? And how we got this done. We formed this team in MetLife called the Mod Squad, right? And this was really MetLife's first foray into DevOps. And we took a bunch of developers and paired them up with architects and infrastructure engineers and operators, and we sent them to one side of the building and said, go figure it out. Go figure out how to containerize microservices. And they did it, right? They did it. And the cool thing is they did all this other stuff too. They started playing around with chat ops, right? Managing Docker infrastructure from a chat room. They started playing around with bots and doing all these system maintenance tasks without any human intervention. They ended up bringing in open source technology, which is like something that MetLife has traditionally had an allergic reaction to. They really changed the culture at MetLife. And the thing is that they had a great time doing it. After the first phase of the project, we sent out a survey. And by and large, everyone said it was the most fulfilling and fun project they'd ever worked at in their entire career. So they got stuff done, and they had fun doing it. This team recently won an award from our CIO, and we pulled them up to New York, this big extravagant dinner and gala. And the CIO said, you guys are changing the culture of the company. You're antibodies to the status quo. It pretty much sums up what you can do with Docker and DevOps. And anyone who's worked in an enterprise knows things are hard to do, right? It's hard to move fast. It's hard to deal with this legacy, right? You've got process issues. You've got culture problems, right? And if I were to talk to someone who works in a similar sized organization, and they'd say, how long did it take you to do? 12 months, 18 months, 24 months? It took us 5 months to go from concept to production with Docker and microservices. 5 months. And it ended up igniting this spark that is spreading across MetLife, right? There's not a week that goes by where someone doesn't come up and say, hey, how do I start doing this Docker thing? How do I do these microservices? I want to start my own mod squad, right? This is really potent stuff. Docker, microservices is technology. DevOps is a culture, right? It's transformative. It really is, right? You can move faster. You're more agile. You're more nimble. That, my friends, is competitive advantage. So if you want to know more about this, right, like from a practitioner's view, come to Tim Tyler's talk later today. He's speaking at 11:15, and he's got kind of the in-the-trenches view or the lessons learned. It's good stuff. Thank you.
That's awesome. That was amazing. Hey, can I get another round of applause for Aaron? That was just an incredible talk. And actually, if you could join me in also giving a huge round of applause to Mark from Oracle and to Swami from Visa. It was really great to hear your perspectives. And of course, all of them have sessions where you can learn more. So just a few more things. If you want to learn more about what we showed during the demos today, here's a set of talks you can attend. Of course, there are probably more talks that you want to attend than you'll be able to fit in. Everything is going to be videotaped and made available online in a few days. And highly encourage you to, if you're interested, to learn these things. Also, very much encourage you to learn from other customers. One of the best things about this DockerCon is that there's so many wonderful customers who are sharing their stories. Visa and MetLife, but also the people that you see listed here. And it's a great range of applications, all the way from traditional applications to microservices, big data, Internet of Things, and even some machine learning. So encourage you to go see it. And with that, thank you. Enjoy day 2 of DockerCon.